Hey everybody, just letting you know that season 1 of Navigating Adult Autism ends with our episode airing on July 22nd, 2024. But we're going to take a very short break, but you have to tune in to season 2 on September 16th of 2024. And to start off our season 2, we are having the wonderful Temple Grandin. We are honored and thrilled that she is on, and you in the autism world probably know who she is. If not, it's a great introduction to get to know Temple Grandin. We are so excited for season 2, again, premiering September 16th, 2024. And our last episode of season 1 is July 22nd. So thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Welcome to Navigating Adult Autism. We're just a bunch of moms with a lot of perspectives, experience, and opinions. And tonight's podcast, we are going to talk about a lot of controversial subjects regarding autism. So this would be a good one to listen to out there. There's a lot of coverage about autism, vaccines, causes of autism, the new changes in the DSM-5, which some of you might not even know what that is, ABA, diets, detox, research, inclusion, forced inclusion, people diagnosing themselves, young people on TikTok. We're covering it all tonight. And so there's a lot to talk about. And I think a lot of us as parents, we've all been around a long time with this diagnosis. And there's a lot of things going on, even back in the day when we were the first ones with gluten-free children. And that's just the, still crazy people out there. Not crazy people, but the craze of being gluten-free is still out there. But we remember when that was a big deal for children with autism and that they would actually have more language if they were gluten-free. So there's all kinds of things out there. We're going to discuss them all tonight. And listen, we don't know. It might get heated. We might talk about a lot of things that are out there. And we're going to start it off. And Heather, I'm going to throw it to you first. Let's talk about what's getting us mad these days about autism. You want me to start saying that all these people on TikTok self-diagnosing themselves?
Yeah, we're going to start with self-diagnosis?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait. Do we need an explicit rating on this episode?
We'll know after it's over.
I'm going to try not to cuss. That's my goal. The goal of this podcast.
And that's new to me. I didn't know there was individuals on TikTok or anywhere diagnosing themselves as like a character trait, and it's not a character trait.
Yeah, well, I think, so just for mine, again, as we say at the beginning of every podcast, we're just all living this life. I don't, say I'm an expert for everybody. So, but what I've experienced with this and things I've listened to and heard and that kind of stuff is that, I don't know how many years it's been going on, but as part of the kind of neurodiversity movement, there are people that, kind of talk about how autism is a personality trait, not a disorder. Mm. And it's not something that you should fix or try to work on or anything like that. And so this is really a large reason why I started the page for Zachary, because what's happening, at least for families like us on the profound end, is we're getting lost. And so we're romanticizing, and when I say we, I do not mean me, but I mean in the media and on social media and all of that stuff. When you see people with autism and they're, a brain surgeon or whatever, that is wonderful. And maybe there are a bunch of people with autism that are brain surgeons, but the reality is there's a lot of people that this affects their independence. And I mean, my son will not ever be able to live by himself or go to the bathroom by himself or brush his teeth it's harmful since it's such a wide spectrum, it's harmful to families like us because we're going to end up not getting support that we need on down the road because the general public is going to have this mental model of autism as something that's just cool and kind of quirky and fun. And that's just not the case.
That's very true.
Yeah. So the self-diagnosing part, I think, as we had just talked about right before we started, was just, I find it to be disrespectful to the people that have gone through this diagnostic process, which is very timely and not timely. The wait is very long and it's very intense. And I don't appreciate, our family does not appreciate people saying they've got a touch of autism or they've self-diagnosed themselves. You wouldn't do that for diabetes or diagnose yourself with any other type of situation. You would go to that medical person that needs to give you, walk you through those diagnostic steps. So, that's my thought on self-diagnosing people. They're basically kind of smoothing over the families like ours, like we don't exist. And so the problem with that is a lot of people that are profound can't advocate for themselves. So that's why you have a lot of parents out there with pages and whatnot. And then sometimes we as parents get negativity towards us because they basically say that we're not letting our child or adult, whatever age they are, speak for themselves. And the reality is they can't speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just a swirl. And to me, the controversy of this is just, it's like the last thing that families need, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
Like there's plenty of things going on that we need to worry about. Something like this, just meeting adversity within your own diagnosis world, is kind of horrible.
And I think you're right saying you guys get lost. I'll be real quick. Because I really don't see that a lot on the news or the media, social media, unless it is parents doing their own page about profound autism. You guys really are. You don't really hear about even research or on the news or what's being done or what's out there.
It's because
for
it
the
makes
lower
people
end.
uncomfortable. And it's that
That's what you guys
uncomfortable. Yes. People are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear about, reality. They don't want to hear the reality. They want a sweet story of like somebody with a disability being a homecoming queen. I mean, that's what gets the likes, right? On social media. So, it's not fun, but it's true and it has to be addressed. And it's that continued isolation that we've talked about in many other episodes, that there's a degree of isolation that goes far beyond, 2020 when people were in their houses, baking cakes and stuff. Like that was our life well before 2020.
Yeah. You're like, what's changed?
Yeah. So I don't know. Someone else.
Well said.
So when you make it, what I see is that it's becoming trendy. And when you make it trendy, you pull away some of that seriousness and you do a lot of damage within the community and what others are seeing as autism and what autism can be. Yes, we do know it's a spectrum, and we're going to hit that when we talk about the DSM-5. But what happens is, there's this change in attitude in the way autism is seen. So what happens when this trend is forgotten, and even that goes away? Because years ago it might have been ADHD. It might, how do we self-diagnose ADHD? How do we do this and that? We go through these different trends, and there's a lot of damage being done right now. Now, if somebody realizes as an adult that, maybe they do have autism, maybe that, and they self-realize, self-actualize, bring in their own supports and understand maybe limitations and barriers that they face, and there becomes this understanding. But when you're self-diagnosing on social media and saying, this is what autism is and this is what I need, one thing, it changes the community's perspective, but then also, you're providing, a different look of what autism really can be. And, I hate, sometimes people are doing, the social media to spread awareness, like on Heather's page. Sometimes, but I think a lot of times people use social media for attention. Mm-hmm. Yes. If you are really diagnosed and you have these barriers, are you on there trying to talk about barriers and helping and solve and uplifting and bringing things together, or are you just doing it for likes? Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds harsh,
It's the truth.
But it is the truth. And, and an adult can get diagnosed, but there's a lot of pieces. And there has to be developmental history.
And diagnostic tests. You have to go and get tested to get the true diagnose. So go get tested. If you claim you have autism, then go get tested and prove it.
So what tests do you take? We know there's no medical test.
No, there's not a blood test.
There's not a blood test. You can't take a biopsy anywhere and say.
But there are tests that are given.
Psychological tests.
So there's the ADOS. There was CARS. I mean, that was our first experience. And some people, some
Don't
professionals like some don't. There are a lot of pieces. There is a lot of information. So one, the developmental history, then those tests, and then a lot of questionnaires, for that person, for those people around them. So when you're in school, it's your teachers. And if you're an adult, could it be your employer? So there's a lot of input, and and it's where are your struggles across your day? If you only have struggles at one little piece, yes, if there's a trigger there, that's one thing. But if you're claiming because you do this one thing, is it, and how much is it impacting your life?
Those checklists are self-reporting many times, and so you can see where people are tempted to say, you read through you go online, you pull up one of those checklists and you go, interesting.
But yeah, so this is Elizabeth. And some of those things, but a lot of those there are screeners. There are screeners that have, that are official screeners versus somebody that maybe was sitting behind the desk at a magazine who read an article on autism and put this together. So is it an official screener for autism, or is it somebody that was sitting in their office that really didn't know, read an article on red flags, got onto one of the websites and said, oh, this is it? Because when you get some of those lists match a lot of maybe ADHD or OCD or
all the different.
And people are waiting for months and months, sometimes a year, to get diagnosed by the proper type of people. So we know there's designated people that they should be going to.
Also, if you're going to jump through all those hoops to get a diagnosis, it means it's probably impacting your life.
Right.
So it may be. I mean, it's more reliable that. That those people are at least...
But that's valid than the child or the teenager on TikTok that's just...
That's exactly what I'm saying, yeah. It's like at least they're trying to find something, an answer of why they're...
Why they can't hold a job.
Right. Why they are dealing with the things that they are dealing with.
Right.
Instead of just saying that they have one or two symptoms or something that they have matched on some online survey or something. So at least they're trying to get an answer.
Well, I remember even as adults, we'd talk about, I must have autism because I'm like that too. But I remember hearing parents all through that, maybe I have a little bit because but it's exaggerated with the child with autism or the adult. It's so exaggerated.
And you can function. Isn't that the point?
That's the key.
Yes, I have common
you can
sense
function through your day.
Yes, exactly right. So that really irritated me when I found out that people were so lighthearted about it and thinking it's a character trait or that it's Sheldon on Big Bang Theory or it's The Good Doctor, which both good shows.
But it's Rain Man.
Or it's Rain Man.
I mean,
it's not all,
We've talked about this before, our group, just not on the microphone.
Yeah.
But the mental model, and I was talking to my mom about this week, just thinking about this episode, and the mental model, even for teachers, because she was in the education, was a person with autism hangs around the perimeter and rocks back and forth. That's what the mental model of the culture when Zachary was diagnosed, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. We were scared to death of rocking in a corner and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And now,
and flapping.
Amazingly, and not amazingly in a good way, but amazingly, now it seems like the mental model for somebody is just a little bit of quirkiness, a touch of a personality disorder. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, we missed the whole middle part. Like, what happened? Because there are extremes, yes, but like the whole gamut of it, it can be and look so different for everybody. But yeah,
are we trying to normalize the damage?
Yeah. Well,
This is Dawn.
and why do we do it? I mean, we just talked about this too, but like, why do we do it just with autism? We're not normalizing being a diabetic. We're not normalizing whatever. I mean, think of countless things. I'm wondering why our community has to be so off-putting to each other. It just
because whenever you look at it, the controversy there, some of these families, they're very split on how they believe, and they get very offensive on how they believe and what they believe, and if one family doesn't. So there has been some disputes within the autism community,
for sure.
instead of being together.
a lot.
I mean, in 2005 or something, there was a lot of different disputes. I mean, if you didn't believe if you didn't put your child on the gluten-free diet, you're not doing everything that you need to do. You just almost don't bring it up. You just
it's gluten-free, casein-free diet, and if you weren't on it, you were looked down upon, or like, what are you doing for your child? That's very true. That's very true. Yeah.
I think with this new trend, right? We are. I just lost what I was going to say.
What are we going to do to stop it? I mean, is anyone out there
To come together.
Yeah,
Does anyone say anything about it out there?
we're doing a podcast.
I'm just going to show. Yeah, I mean, to me, the podcast. Here's what I feel like. I feel like that social media, first of all, is known for this like fake perfect picture kind of thing. And so, I'm very cognizant, like on Zachary's page, like we're going to talk about the fact. I'm going to do it in an eloquent way because I don't want to be, whatever. I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, but I do need to tell you that he needs help wiping in the bathroom. I need to get that across to people. Right. So I think that's what it takes, I think it takes vulnerability of the families to just let it loose. Just talk about it.
Yeah.
Because people do not know if they're not involved. And like I've said before, if the majority of the public don't understand and we need legislative help, we're in trouble.
Right.
We are in trouble.
Well, I think this is even diminishing even the needs of those who, for lack of a better word, higher functioning Asperger's, all that, level 1. It's diminishing their needs because a lot of their needs are invisible.
Yes.
And so it's not just harming ours
spectrum.
with the more profound. I think it's doing just as much damage to those who are, they are out in the workforce, that are doing some things because it's minimizing.
But then they keep
struggles.
losing their jobs over and they get fired. They can't keep one.
Or they're asked what their specialty is. Or like,
what's your specialty?
Yeah.
Your splinter skill?
Yeah. What are you skilled at? What is your extreme interest that you're so proficient at? And
guess what, people? Not all of our kids have that specialty.
Well, I would say a lot of them. I mean, that again, it's that mental model of like, I can't think of his name, but what are the really super old, dead, famous people that they say, oh, that guy had autism? How
Albert
in the world do you know that Albert Einstein had autism?
Yeah.
Who was there with him? Who diagnosed him? Like, don't even do that. Like,
I always wondered that.
No, we don't all play piano and concert piano or paint or, God bless America. That's just not how it works.
Right. And even when you talk about your kids, the different levels, like with the VeggieTales, how he scripts all day. I mean, my son does it on a different level, right? So it's all, you can tell who has it, who doesn't. I mean, when you live it, you can tell, even when they say, oh, I think he has it, you feel like we're all kind of experts in a way because we're so used to it that we can just
attuned to it.
We're attuned to it for sure.
Yeah.
And like, no, but anyway.
Do you think that it started? Okay, we're kind of gone after social media, but do you think it started when they changed the DSM-5?
Well, let's talk about the DSM-5 and what does that stand for those of you that don't know out there?
Well, and later also we're going to have
manual.
Say it again, Dawn.
I'll let Tara read it so that I should.
Okay. Sorry.
She's got it here in front of us.
Yeah, I have it in front of us. Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And we have the DSM-5 TR. TR is the more updated version.
Okay.
And we will briefly talk about it tonight, but we do have a couple guests coming on in the next few weeks, and he's going to go, doctors are going to come in and discuss it in great detail.
I would, the changes in the DSM-5. I think if my son had been born 60 years ago, he would have had an MR, a mentally retarded diagnosis. Because how his autism impacts him, even though he's verbal and can communicate, it's slow, it's pedantic, he was a late talker. His characteristics of autism, I think it would have been an MR diagnosis. So,
and a lot of our kids would have been.
I think just the science and the diagnostic, whatever, just hadn't been developed. It definitely does depend what, decade you're diagnosed in, because they continue hopefully to learn and revise.
Yeah, and the reason we brought up the DSM-5 is that we all, as parents, it was all brought to our attention. Is that what you're going to talk about, Dawn? That it was all brought to our attention. Like, well, what does the DSM-5? I'm like, well, what is that? What's the DSM-5 or 4 or 3, whatever it was?
What was the change?
What was the change? Go ahead, Dawn.
How do you get a diagnosis? Well, I certainly don't know what it says.
I can give it over. I can give it to you. You could probably read it
because we don't know the new level changes. Like, I didn't know there was.
I can actually. I can even read you the levels if you want, but it's
it's too long.
Can you briefly?
Yeah, I can briefly. So there are 2 pieces to it, and so one of the reasons the change. So I think we really need to address the change really quick. Is it used to be that you got an autism diagnosis, or you've got Asperger's, and you've got PDD, NOS, so all these other things. So there were like 5 different, is that correct, Cynthia? 5 different, can you name them all?
No.
And so those with those diagnoses outside of autism were not receiving funding, basically. They got the leftovers or they got nothing, right? So the intentions were good, so everybody was put into this spectrum. So that's made a big change in, kind of where everybody else lied. So that was the spectrum. So to be diagnosed, there are 2 pieces. So there's the first piece is social and emotional. Social and emotional.
Yeah, social emotional.
And there's 3 parts to that. I can't tell you if, offhand what all 3, but you have to have, to get a diagnosis of autism, you have to have all 3 of those. And then the second piece is restricted and repetitive behavior. So there's 4 criteria, but you only have to have 2 of those. So those 2 pieces, and then you should have all the parent questionnaires, teachers questionnaires, developmental history, all those things should take a part and a place in that diagnosis. But to officially have that diagnosis, that's the criteria. Okay. So the 2 different parts, all 3 social emotional, and then 2 of the 4 of the repetitive.
Yeah. I remember some of that from special education department when I didn't do a lot of that, but the school psychs did and everything. But I think as parents, we all were talked about that manual. And I thought, what is that? But I became educated very quickly about it. But when you talk about the spectrum, the PDD was the umbrella. I always heard that umbrella. Did you guys hear about if he falls under the umbrella?
We talked a lot about umbrellas.
Yes, we talked.
Yeah.
I don't like umbrellas right now.
Yeah.
It's too much umbrella talk.
Well, yes. And that's kind of what started those changes, because it was just an umbrella. But we have the levels too. So there are the levels that.
Okay. Yeah,
so
I don't know the levels.
So the levels, there's 3 levels. 1 is needing supports. Level 2 is needing significant supports. And 3 is very significant supports.
Oh.
So it's because it's not the severity level. So Carrie.
So the new diagnostic in the DSM-5, if our kid had PDD NOS,
which is
pervasive developmental disorder, not
otherwise specified.
Okay, so if they were originally diagnosed with this, is there a timeline that we need to go back and have them retested according to the new DSM-5?
Well, from my understanding, no. They do recommend, at least when you're younger, to go in every 3 years, not to be retested to take away a diagnosis, but to reassess what the person's needs are.
Yeah.
And so the levels can change, and the levels are not scientifically there's not the science behind it. It's just
in school you were tested every 3 years. In special ed, if you had IEP, you were tested every 3 years.
So those levels can change, and you can have a level 1 in the social emotional communication and a level 3 in restricted event repetitive behavior. So those will change. So it is suggested in that we're looking at, what are the next steps for that person. Mm-hmm. They've had a 3-year plan, and now it's time to do it again. But you're not supposed to lose an autism diagnosis, but you might not meet the criteria to be given that. But they don't really take it away. They just say you no longer qualify under the diagnostic criteria.
The only thing I can think of on that is, of course, because this is an adult autism podcast, is when they become adults and they're out of school and they don't have that 3-year testing and that IEP following them around. I know when my son was put on our insurance, and he's almost 32 and he's still on our health insurance, that when we changed, the insurance company wanted something from his current doctor, which is an internist, and he had to fill it out kind of like confirming, like, yes, this is still my son, and yes, he still has issues, and just kind of, fortunately, it was a quick form, but they had to have something in writing from a medical doctor that, yes, this is still needed. I don't think there's anything else unless the child is significantly...
When you're a guardian, like we get papers from the court every year.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Because, he's, in their eyes, an incapacitated individual. So those are a hurtful bunch of forms to receive every year.
Oh, I bet.
No one wants to fill those out every year. Like, yes, it's still the same. Thank you for reminding me. Here's your papers back. But I think if you were in a different spot, though, it would make sense, right, that maybe things have changed or evolved to where there's different needs, like Elizabeth is saying. So I understand why they do that. That makes sense to me.
So, Elizabeth, if a new person will be a level 1, 2, or 3 now when they're tested for autism,
and they'll receive a level in each of those two. The social emotional and the restricted and repetitive. So there will be 2, and a lot of times they, a lot of times they are the same, but they're not necessarily at all.
Okay. And they took away Asperger's syndrome. They took away PDD, correct?
I think all of them.
And the doctors, like I said, the doctors probably
just ASD.
So
it's just ASD, autism spectrum disorder.
So instead of high functioning, should I be saying level 1? Because I know that a lot of people
hasn't been tested though, because you won't know where he falls on unless he's been tested. That's why I was asking earlier. Do we need to, have our kids? Yeah. And do we need to have our kids retested according to the new 1, 2, and 3 level?
Most people haven't. I don't think.
No. Yeah, most people don't, and it's the only reason that there's that recommendation out there. Is, if the needs change and to kind of get those newer recommendations. So, you can kind of have eyes on by professionals to kind of see where they're at. And,
I sort of feel like his psychiatrist has said level 1 in one of his appointments. So I just don't want to use the wrong terminology. I know that I say that all the time, high functioning, because that's what it was. When it's hard to change your vocabulary.
People still use those terms too, though. I think it's as the wording, I guess, has evolved. We've all come up in different. Anytime you meet somebody, they may be used to other words than we are, but
I know I get tired of saying, he's diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, but that's not really in the criteria. I'm sure they don't even know I'm talking about DSM, but but it uses PDD umbrella, and under that umbrella falls autism.
They're like, I don't know,
okay. But I just feel the need to. Well, I don't know why I feel the need to do that.
No, I feel like we have to be politically correct all the time.
Yeah. And yes, exactly.
That's why you just need to give grace to everyone. It's just like, my gosh.
I know.
Well, that's, and I'm glad we kind of the topic turned to that, because, we'll get meetings and half the time we don't even know what we're talking about. We're just like, okay, enough with the correct language. We're just going to talk real, and we're not going to worry. Nobody's going to get offended, and we're just going to talk, because we're so careful that we don't even know what we're talking about.
You can't get anything done.
We can't get anything done because we can't clarify anything. But my question is like, how do those here that had those other diagnoses feel about that change, being changed into a spectrum? Did you feel like your children lost their identity? Did you feel like it was a boost? Did you see any effects from it? How do you feel about that? And, like an adult like my daughter being diagnosed with autism, has a brother that is, yes, in that,
Same diagnosis.
profound, but and she has the same diagnosis, and that's hard on her. Because she said, sometimes I have these dreams that I'm just going to wake up one morning and I'm going to be where he's at. It's just like, I said, I know it's not going to happen, but, now I have the same diagnosis. So how do you guys feel?
Well, honestly, the first thing I thought of was, I wonder what Hans Asperger thinks about that. I mean, because he brought it to the United States, in 1992, the year my son was born, that, all of them have the same autism characteristics, and yet the diagnosed with Asperger's had a lot of language. And that was the only difference.
And usually they were normal to average intelligence.
Normal to average intelligence, yes. And so
that didn't make much sense, but
yeah, but it was his research that he did, and that's what Tony Atwood, the Asperger guru, I always wonder what he thinks. Maybe we can get him on the podcast. That would be great. Because I really liked him. I liked his book. It helped me so much. And there again, it's Tony Atwood, Asperger Syndrome, the book. It's little, it's firm, it's good, it's quick. And I don't know. I was in a way, I was like, oh, good. Now I can just say ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder. Instead of this dissertation I seem to do to people.
But we know what ASD is. A lot of the population, when you say ASD, they're not going to know. You say autism, they do.
Exactly.
Well, you could say the whole autism spectrum disorder, which is what I do, because I just feel like it's good to point out that it's a spectrum.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think I'm okay with it, I think, but I'd like to know what the experts about that feel. But it makes sense. I guess it is a spectrum. So if you have Asperger, high functioning autism, that could be Asperger's, although back in the day it really wasn't, they said, but I think I'm okay with it.
I've turned it into a joke. I mean, with Temple Grandin, PDDS is going away, so my son's going to be cured, right?
She didn't get that sarcasm.
No, she didn't.
Yeah. You should have known better on that, but
I know. She's a brilliant woman, but she has autism.
That's right.
I think what irritates me most about the DSM-5 is all of that time and money spent on arguing the minutia, when I would have rather that money be spent on finding a cause of autism.
Oh, that's another controversy that maybe we should
nice segue there.
Nice segue.
The cause.
Not only the cause, but on.
So what is the cause, Dawn?
What is the cause? Okay.
What do you think?
What do I think? I am an anti-vaxxer. I have never said that JR was vaccine injured because I don't have a memory of a dramatic reaction where vaccinated in the morning, in the hospital, fighting for his life in the evening,
But we do know families.
We do know lots of families that had that. Seizures that night from the vaccine. Absolutely. Yeah. Know many of them.
So Rita Schriffler, and I have her permission to use her name, she was the first autism mom that I heard raise this issue. I went to lunch for her. We connected through the AA list. This is before the internet, connection. Right. So I'm expecting, I don't know what I was expecting. Another mom, you talk about your kids, and all she did was talk about vaccines and the harm that they were doing and heavy metal toxicity. And she went on, and I know my eyes glazed over. It's like,
we all do.
What? That can't be. And and because I didn't have this profound, reaction to it. But as time went on, Rita invited David Kirby he's the author of a book, Evidence of Harm. So I went to hear David Kirby speak, listen to other parents' stories. And, it's just like, it makes sense to me. I'm not a scientist, so I cannot, and I don't even want to read the science. I read David Kirby's book, has a lot of science in it, but it also has a lot of anecdotal information and the families that he was working with.
But as mothers, we do a lot of research. As mothers, we do a lot of research.
And anecdotal to me, when I hear from other parents and what has transpired in their lives versus the studies in the white papers, I'm going to believe the anecdotal stories from the parents over any white paper.
When you mean white paper, you mean medical
studies.
Studies, okay.
As parents, I think we can be biased. You always want, I would want the science backup.
Yeah, I want both.
Yes, yeah. I want both too. But I'm not sure.
But the fact that I think a convincing evidence for me is, okay, there's a vaccine injury court. It has compensated autism families
for vaccine injuries.
Yeah,
because it does happen.
Yes, 4 years. No one really knows that, but it's out there.
Yes, it is. I mean, if you go to the CDC, there's one thing that the CDC knows is that vaccines are safe and effective, and there's no connection between vaccines and autism. So I was recently at the American Pediatrics Association website, and this issue of vaccine and autism connection has been thoroughly researched, and here's the list of papers that prove it. And so they had a list of, maybe 10 links to 10 different papers. And, but then, you go and you pick up RFJK's book that he co-authored with Brian Hooker, Let the Science Speak. And they have done the exact same thing. Here are peer-reviewed journals that prove that there's a connection. And so they list all of their, And so the science, in my
it's all over the place,
is inconclusive at this point.
Well, that's not what you hear on the news, though. Because we've all been targets, whether you heard the news or not. We were targeted. When things happen, or there was a measles outbreak a couple years ago, they were blaming the autism families.
Yep.
Yeah, the anti-vaxxers.
They blame us for everything. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I didn't mean us as a whole. I shouldn't have spoke for the whole group. I'm saying sorry, I'm trying to feel like I've just said the wrong thing about myself. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I don't trust them either at all. So I'm very, they always blame the autism community.
Yeah, even
for
now,
illnesses that are being spread.
And actually some really great, I'm not going to name anybody, but just certain groups that I follow too, I've heard many people say, that's over and done with, folks, over and done with. Vaccines don't have anything to do with autism. I don't know how we can be so black and white about stuff like we were just talking about, when we know people have been injured or people have autoimmune,
proof.
whatever the case may be, that there are people out there that vaccines are harmful for.
Right.
That's just a fact. Like it or not, whatever.
Yeah. And there's a segment of government that says that there's an association. The vaccine injury court.
Well, and I think, because I block out some of that stuff from early on, but I remember that Zachary was saying a few words, not like he was talking a conversation or anything. He was diagnosed at 2, so I'm talking about when he was little. And he was waving and saying bye-bye and stuff like that. But was not after he got 6 shots and, as Michael calls them, his chuppers. Yes, isn't that sweet? And my mom just remembers him screaming. And he was not a screamy baby. And he was screaming, and he had fevers for a couple of days and things like that. And then it was just, those kind of
changed.
Yeah, a little bit of a change there. But to also say that, so if you ask my husband would be like, oh, yeah, it's a vaccine. I'm kind of more maybe, I don't know where anyone else on the table here is, but I don't trust what people tell me in the media, first of all, number one, because we've all had experiences. We know people that have suffered consequences, like Dawn was saying, those just obvious right, where you have a seizure or whatever you have. But we didn't have that. We had fevers and screaming. But I just got to a certain point that people were so rude about it in the early years. They were so divisive and mean that I thought, there's only so many fights I can fight with people. And I just thought, what's done is done now. What is it going to change for me? Now I've got to deal with whatever. If it was vaccines or if it was environment or a mixture or whatever, like, what am I going to do about that? Now I'm just one person with a kid now that needs a lot of help. So, I backed off some of that, always listening to everything. But I am disappointed in the answers that we have now through that whole It's been 20 years, and I don't feel like there's been new
research or anything.
Yeah, I don't feel like we've had great new updates.
Correct.
They say it's not the vaccine, but they can't tell me.
Well, they did take the thimerosal out of the vaccine, so
that's
the other additive,
and then put in aluminum, which is just as harmful and a neurotoxin.
And I think that's what they would say too, right? Is that if it was the thimerosal, that's what they said years ago too. Is that if it was the thimerosal and they took them out, and the rate still rose, then it wasn't the thimerosal. It's like, and I'm not saying it's not a complicated, it's so complicated, and it's just so frustrating that I should have brought tissues. I mean, it's just so frustrating that we have to have further complications we have to fight, and there's not one category of autism where it's not some sort of debate or fight. It is exhausting.
You're right.
And it's really not. Is that the best interest for the people that are diagnosed? Like I need to spend more time with, the supports and things that Zachary needs. I shouldn't be stressed out about, can I say this or that or, because I worked in healthcare for 18 years and I got looks when people mentioned vaccines. And from my perspective on the vaccine part, I've never, ever, ever told a family not to get their children vaccinated. That is not a decision that I should make for anyone. The only thing I've said was I really feel like spreading things out and understanding, could you get one at a time? That would be if I was doing it over. That is what I would do. I would say one at a time, folks, so that we know if there's a complication, we know where maybe that's stemming from.
Which one caused it.
Well, they keep adding more and more and more vaccines. If you turn around and you look years ago, 25 years ago, what was the schedule compared to what we have now? And have there been testing, with all of these new ones, what's it doing developmentally to our children?
I mean, I would spread it out one at a time. And
we did do that.
Them out.
Because Zion had all of his vaccines, and then he was diagnosed with autism. And then when I had Caleb 4 years later, we had the same pediatrician, and I was like, I just don't feel comfortable. And we know that there's a genetic link of some sort. And first of all, I didn't even know if I wanted to have another child. And then we are faced with the idea of having all these vaccines again. And we just did a different shot schedule. We still got the same shots. We waited for the MMR, but everything else, we just went and got a nurse visit, and he only had one shot at a time.
Yeah.
So, or a pediatrician.
Yeah, we did. It wasn't, I think we may have done 2 at a time, but they were 2 different, like our pediatrician said, okay, this one and this one, there might be, she explained it so well. And she was very good about a different shot schedule. And he wasn't in daycare or anything like that. So he stayed home with me. So it wasn't like I was worried about him.
Well, I was to say about the vaccines, one of the things I remember as you become knowledgeable and you're talking to your other parents about vaccines, my son went in for one of his high school vaccinations. And the nurse said, well, he might as well get his other vaccination. I just lost my train of thought. What's not MRSA, what's the meningitis?
Meningitis at 16, they have to have that.
Yes, 16.
Yeah.
He might as well just get his meningitis vaccine. He's here. The nurse is talking about it. And I said, okay. And by that point, I was very educated to read the handout that they give you, and which is, what is it called? The handout. But to really read the fine print, the insert. So they give you They give you a copy of the insert, which is their own insert, what they want on the insert. It isn't actually really the whole insert,
From the
I
CDC.
found out.
And in those rare cases, you could have this adverse reaction and this adverse reaction and this adverse reaction.
But the nurse got mad at me, is what I'm saying. I said, I go, can I read that? So I read at the bottom. And now I'm sorry that I can't remember which vaccine he was getting for high school. But at the bottom, the 3 main side effects, it said, do not give this meningitis vaccine with blah, 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 which is what my son was getting. So I called it out to the nurse and I said, it says right here not to give this meningitis vaccine with this vaccine. It's right here.
Oh my goodness.
And she goes, oh, well, that just really rarely happens. Like they just have to put that on there. That rarely happens. And it said it can cause that. I always say it wrong.
Guillain-Barré.
Yes. You knew what I was going to say, Cynthia. It causes that, and it causes 2 other things. And I said, and I thought, okay, here's my time. And I said, why would I do this to my son? I said, you're a nurse.
Take that chance.
I said, you're a nurse.
No.
Why would I do this? Why would I give him meningitis? And I said, by the way, he has high functioning autism or Asperger's at the time is what I said. And you know what? He's not going to college. And he's not in the locker room right now with a bunch of the boys and catching this. Well, ma'am, you're just getting upset for no reason. Those are very rare statistics. I said, well,
I guess we're all a rare statistic then.
Yeah, I said, no, I'm passing on the meningitis vaccine, and he still doesn't have it. So
I still have a physical reaction. I feel ill when. So we had a great pediatrician that was really nice about it, but physically, and I'm sure you guys all do.
Oh yeah.
I had a physical reaction like, please don't make me do this. I'm going to throw up. I do not want to give this non-speaking kid who already has tons of stuff to deal with. I do not know what this is going to do to him. And I just don't fight with me about it. And so we had a great doctor, but I mean, people don't understand that this is something that's followed us through since our kids were small. This is a emotional thing.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And we're not a small group. Yeah. And we're growing.
No, the 7 of us are a little small.
Well, I mean,
but yeah, we're not a small group. And in reality.
Well, we were talking off the mic about the numbers. And I think my son's birth cohort, I always said 1 in 166. Mm-hmm. Currently, you go to the CDC, 1 in 34.
Yeah.
It's like, so what is going on?
Right.
And why isn't the CDC, the NIH, what research are they doing?
Where's the research?
They're normalizing it. They're normalizing it.
I think they're talking about they always, I mean, typically what I hear, and Elizabeth or anybody else, it's that there's just better diagnosis programs, so more people are getting diagnosed.
Sorry.
As Rita would say, it's hard to miss a train wreck. And profound autism, or
we're diagnosing them better. We're diagnosing them earlier.
Bullshit. I don't think we're doing better than that. I think that there's just, I don't know why we scare people so much, but I think there's just something out there in the media that's like, we've got to sell this story. Mm-hmm. And if I go on NBC Nightly News and they tell me that, hey guys, vaccines have anything to do with autism, I mean, a lot of people who aren't directly connected to that are going to believe that wholeheartedly. Like I said, it's not just about believing it, but it's about trusting. I do not trust. I mean, like if you think about the days when vaccines are a great thing but we can't say vaccines are perfect, and we can't ignore the fact that people are harmed by them sometimes.
Right.
And everyone always thinks it's not going to be them. Until it's them. I mean, that's just human nature.
Yeah.
But I do think what I see trending wise is that, when polio and stuff, right? When they had vaccines, I feel like the purpose of those at that point were to truly help people. It wasn't about money.
Right.
We didn't have commercials about every flippin' vaccine that you could get.
Every commercial on TV is about some kind of drug.
Yeah, I mean, we're so inundated with it that now I feel like, yes, we've lost the purpose of, we want to help people directly. There's a lot of money being made, and I mean, take it or leave it, but that's the truth.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Well, and most of our listeners know this and have probably heard this, especially if they've got, a child on the spectrum, but you cannot sue the pharmaceutical companies that make the vaccines. They've taken that right away. So the only way you can be compensated is to go to vaccine court and go to court against the government. Mm-hmm. And then they get to decide.
Who has the time and money for that, right?
And it's very lengthy and very few cases are won.
Yeah. So Hannah Pauling, the one I remember when the press conference was, and I wrote the date down in my Bible because I had it open. And I think it was March, something or other, 2008. And 1.5 million. But what I remember, Hannah Pauling's father is a neurologist. Her mother was a nurse, also with some type of legal background. They had a mechanism of harm. It was a mitochondrial dysfunction. And, they got compensated. But I think the families that came later had a much harder time. Brian Hooker, the author of Let the Science Speak, they went through vaccine court and it bogged down and it went nowhere. And I mean, if you think about it, if you're going to compensate everybody who's diagnosed with autism with $1.5 million, the government can't do that. So it's not the pharmaceutical company. It's my understanding the vaccine court is funded by a fraction of the cost of each vaccine goes, to compensate those from the rare adverse event.
Reactions. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about genetics. I don't think you can not discuss genetics along with, vaccines, because many people say, well, we think it's a genetic disposition. I mean, why does everybody?
Is there proof of that?
Some people get vaccine injured and some people don't. So why? What's the difference there? Is there a genetic disposition that their body cannot chelate, cannot break down those chemicals that are put into the body?
Could be.
Yep. I think the numbers, you can't have a genetic epidemic, right? The numbers shouldn't be increasing like we're seeing them increasing if it was totally genetic.
I mean, the vaccines have increased. How many are there now?
Yeah. I think the Children's Health Defense, it was like 1 in 100 now. And now, so some of them are these cocktail things like the MMR. So you're getting vaccination, and I don't know if they're counting, the
measles,
MMR is
rubella.
3, a 3-in-1, and it gets counted as 3. But
yeah, that's when I noticed with my son after the MMR that there was a drastic change in his personality. And it was right after that. And I didn't connect it right away because we got it when we moved down here, and he just changed. He didn't seize or anything or have seizures, which a lot of the kids do. But I just thought, what is wrong with him? What happened?
It wasn't in the conversation back then.
Right.
Our kids that are around their 30s now, it wasn't even in the conversation.
Right. I just learned from parents that it had so much similar circumstances.
Zachary either. It wasn't for a couple of years.
It was a couple of years after that.
Right.
My daughter, who's under 30, that by the time it was time for her.
What's Nicole's story?
Well, and look at Elizabeth. We've got our little small case study here. She's got 5 children, and 3 of them are on the spectrum at different levels. I think there's something genetic going on there.
Right. We went with
not that I'm blaming you. No, and your genetics.
This is funny. You want to hear? I'm going to tell you 2 genetic things. So, one, when Nicole was little, and was in with her at that point, it was after she broke her leg. Anyway, with the babysitter.
Oh boy.
So we were there, and the pediatrician, she said, if you get a different husband, you might not have other children with autism. She did not like him, and he did not like her. So that was very interesting. And then we were at a Tony
medical
Atwood
profession.
Yep,
a medical opinion.
Medical opinion. We were at a Tony Atwood conference, and so at the end, he asked, if you have more than one person in your family, more than 2, more than 3, and so I guess the cutoff was probably 2 or 3. So he says, I want to meet you. So we all, there's a handful of us. We went up there, and so he turned to me and he goes, and I said something. He goes, okay, it's not you. It's me. And I said, what? He goes,
yes.
You know what I mean.
Yeah. He knew by talking to you if he had it or not. Yeah.
I was like, well, he's not here to defend himself. And he goes, yeah, I know.
Oh, that's funny.
But it was hilarious. But, I mean, and as far as, our journey through vaccines within, without, all these different things and the different medical procedures, we find out, okay, well, Nate's on tube fed and on oxygen, his first couple weeks of life. What do you think the preservative was that they lined the tube feeding things with? Starts with a TH, Yeah. And so, you're being so careful, looking at alternative ways to, administer, do you not, and and it was like, well, all that work, and I was pumping thimerosal into him. So, and then Nicole got hers, I would call the doctor, say, something's wrong. The nurses just, no, it's normal. You're just a first-time mom. And they shamed me. Oh, yeah. And so, and every time she got something, I held her on my lap, could not move her for a week. And I kept being told, and I kept being told, it's normal. And so I just believed it, first-time mom. And so it wasn't until years later I was talking to moms, and they were complaining, saying, yeah, I can't do anything that afternoon after they have their vaccines. I was like, what? So I started asking around a little bit more, and it's like, we're talking hours, so I'm like, okay, 7 to 10 hours. I was talking 7 to 10 days. And I remember just sitting there, and I couldn't move her. So, but genetics, we do have on both sides of the family a number of, individuals that have an autism diagnosis, first cousins. So my husband's side, at least 2. On my side, I can't remember this.
She's counting on her fingers.
There's like 3 or 4, and then
So you're thinking you believe genetics then, or the combination?
There's probably something genetic, but that, what was that saying there for a long time? Genetic loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger.
So who was doing research now on autism? Whenever you think about it, look, we've got...
what research is being done right
What
now?
is being done? Why haven't we found a genetic disposition? Why haven't we found that exact gene?
Well,
Wonder where
I don't think it's based on one gene, is what they're saying.
Yeah, like if there's lots of different genes they feel like could...
It's a combination.
Yeah.
The last I heard...
There are some... Sorry, I just looked it up on the CDC.
Defined.
There are some that genetic testing can see, of course, like Fragile X and things like that. So, it could be beneficial to get the genetic testing, definitely.
The professionals that I work with report that, what the current studies are is that 50% of people diagnosed with autism are going to have a genetic marker. Now, what does that genetic marker mean? It means that there are that many other people that also had autism that have that same, that same duplication, whatever, that change in their gene. And so what do we do with that? Right now, all we can really do with that is, unless it's like Fragile X or something more significant, we look at what other issues did those same people have? So did that person, end up with kidney issues? Did they have heart disease? So then they can take that information and go test for those things. So the boys have been through genetic testing. And which was funny because we went through the genetic testing and their genes, they didn't have any overlap in any anomalies.
Wow.
Not one. But then we went and measured kidneys, we, did blood work, and we did all these things because others with that same marker had in their, had these type of complications. And so, of course, we did all the tests. We never found anything else that we needed to follow up on further. Mm-hmm. But the recent studies are saying that, 50% will have some type. But they're not the same. They're not the same.
Mm-hmm. I sure would like to hear about more research out there in the media. You don't really...
We need a researcher. We need to find a researcher that's working in the
researcher.
And I have heard, this is so, again, not an expert, but on some podcasts I listened to about with people that actually do these things, not me,
those guys.
They were just talking about that there's less and less researchers that want to get into autism research because there's been a lot of pressure from neurodiversity groups about like the idea of finding a cure and why do you need to find out why I'm perfect the way I am, that kind of situation. Oh, and so I think that's harming the future research a little bit right now too, which is worrisome.
Well, and that goes back to how a lot of us all met is on the Autism Speaks walk and runs and all that stuff, and raising money for research. And there's been a whole population that has turned against Autism Speaks because of those reasons. And it's almost scary to even say Autism Speaks anymore because people, friends of mine who have children on the spectrum who are level 1s or high functioning autistic, they're trying to cure us,
Yeah, we're back to fighting again.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think that the grace, like Terry, you were talking about earlier, I think we need to extend grace for people that in different decades, if you're just now having a child diagnosed 20 years ago, trust me, it was a whole different world. Mm-hmm. And Autism Speaks was, to be quite clear, was the only organization that was speaking for autism, like in the media with like trying to bring some awareness. Right. Mm-hmm. There were other organizations certainly, but they didn't have commercials on TV about being diagnosed and everying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I remember when Nicole was diagnosed and thinking, when is it going to happen? When is it going to be our turn? Because I had a brother with muscular dystrophy, and there was, the Jerry Lewis Telethon and all these resources. And I remember thinking, I can't wait till somebody with star power, somebody with that has a child with autism, because then they're going to be the mover and shaker, and they're going to bring this into the limelight. Because, sad enough as it is. Remember? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, we were thankful for a famous pair of grandparents that decided to speak out because we had nothing else that we felt like could help us. And that's what I think people that are diagnosed now that are in a different space and a different culture than we were, you have to understand, we're old. Like, we grew up on this. We were all young parents seeking help. And there was very little, but let's be clear, insurance did not cover autism at that point. We've fought for so many different things to be covered since those 20 years have passed, that the people that are now benefiting from that work, they're not understanding how it all happened. Yeah. And that's the problem with kind of erasing history, right? Like not knowing where something came from and what the point was in the beginning.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, and that's, we've turned from being proud and working together as a group to shaming each other. Yeah. Was Eric involved in the walks and stuff?
Every year.
Yeah, because it seems like I remember him just really, what do you think he feels to watch this from what he grew up being proud of being a part of, Autism Speaks, this movement to do research and to bring supports and now looking, because he has a life outside of autism now. But how do you think? How's he
doesn't think you can be cured. He says you have autism and you have autism for the rest of your life.
And he was so proud to do his camp thing.
Mm-hmm. Very proud. Mm-hmm.
And I think cure, I will say this, that I think
cure.
Yeah, that's a word obviously that's off-putting for many. I'm not looking for a cure either. That's not what I'm looking for. But when we were, I say we because we all met each other through like walks and stuff like that. But I guess for me personally, no one knew that there wasn't I'm just saying that we were at a point in history where we just didn't know enough that yes, there was Cure Autism Now. There were desperate parents needing answers. Mm-hmm. All these kids were getting diagnosed with autism and no one could tell us squat.
Right.
Well, and we tried a lot of stuff.
We did.
There was no research behind it. It was all anecdotal. But, at that point, you're like, oh, well, this parent said this. Well, I need to try this for my child.
You're going to try anything you can.
Right. You're all like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are you doing?
And that's my point. Until you're in that situation, it's hard. So you just can't put yourself in that spot because, again, no one thinks it's going to happen to them. So all these poor souls at this table, right, happened to them, but it's still not going to happen to me. Like, that's what people think.
Right.
That's the psychology of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. So and 1 in 36 is right now, it's going to happen.
So I think that the word cure, and what I would say, because you certainly wouldn't want to say that on social media, you'd get ate up. But I think that for the people that maybe don't feel like they need to be cured and they're living a life and figuring a checkbook and whatever the case may be, that's fine. But understand there's different people and different whatever. I don't want to cure, Zach. I don't think, first of all, let's be clear. We talk about blessings a lot, right? People's hashtag blessed. Okay. Autism is not a blessing. Not in my book. It's not ever going to be a blessing. Is Zachary a blessing and his personality and the special, unique things about him? That's 100,000% a blessing. The rest of it is not a blessing. Not being able to wipe your bottom or being able to brush your teeth or being able to stay home alone for 10 minutes is not a blessing. I don't care. We all have different perspectives, so there may be people at this table that think differently, and that's totally fine. But I mean, that is a hill I will die on for sure. The vaccine hill, I'm not dying on that hill because I can't prove any of it anyway, and I don't like fighting with people. So,
the damage is already done.
Right. Yeah, now I just have to deal with
the repercussions of
that's right.
whatever it was.
Yes. Yeah, you deal with reality.
Right. And on that note, should we talk about the Vaxxed movie, Kara? You're an expert on the Vaxxed movie.
I am.
That's out there. You are. Well, you got a bus for everyone to go watch it in Kansas City, so I'd say we watched it here. But I'm going to say about the vaccines, too. I think we'd all give this advice about spreading them out. I mean, if I had any advice for any young parents, spread those vaccines out. Get them one at a time, just like you said, Heather, because if you do have a reaction, at least you know which one caused it and spread them out. But nowadays, it just floors my mind how many...
Yeah.
Is it over 100 you're supposed to get in your lifetime now? I looked at the schedule, and how many before age 5? Are you kidding me? I just don't feel like you should inundate your little baby.
I think it's like 24.
Like 24 before age 5? That's nuts. I don't understand.
And I don't think
quote
you need
me on that.
all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to vaccinate, maybe not do all of them. And the Hep B, which I feel if there was any vaccine that caused my son's autism, it might be the Hep B, because my son was low birth weight. I mean, he was under 7 pounds. He was jaundiced. He got the Hep B shot just hours after his birth, and he's jaundiced. I mentioned that, right? Mm-hmm. So why do we give the Hep B? Well, we do it to protect against, you get hepatitis B from sexual encounters and from intravenous drug use. My hours-old infant doesn't really need protection from those two. And how long is the shot effective for? 10 years maybe, and then it starts to wane in protection. Well, if I'm a decent parent, that's still not going to be a problem for him at 10 years. So the Hep B, I mean, let's take that off the schedule.
Well, and what I was told from my mother-in-law, who's a retired nurse, that she was told in nursing school that the reason they started giving so many shots when you gave birth was because of those intravenous drug user parents that would not bring their children back for vaccines. So the consensus was give it to them all while they're in the hospital, because at least they'll get them, because of the not very responsible parents.
Can they get it through the birth process?
Yeah, you can get it from the birth mother, but you can test the birth mother.
Yeah.
So I didn't have it. My son shouldn't. Another thing is some of the boosters. If you, my son didn't get the kindergarten boosters, our pediatrician took blood, the titers. He had a healthy response to the first round, and her comments were, I don't want to assault his system by giving these boosters. I can sign off that even though he didn't get these shots, he has immunity. The blood work shows it. Mm-hmm. So there are some other shots that
a couple friends always had their kids titers tested, and they had good pediatricians, and pediatrician says, no, you don't need the boosters.
Why isn't that the protocol? Because when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Why is that not the protocol? Money
costs too much money to do that. They'd have to order more. I don't know.
And why is not all, but why are some of those toxins in there in the first place? It's so that we can package them in multi-dose vials.
Oh, and that's another thing they talk about, the multi-dose vials. If they don't shake it in between each one, then they don't get the full amount. Or if it's towards the end of the vial, This is just what I've heard. Again, I'm not an expert, but at the end of the vial, the last dose is going to be so much more stronger if it was not, it's shaken and administered in between. Yeah.
Isn't that part of the Vax movie? Let's shoot to the Vax movie before we move on to something else. But
when did the Vax movie come out? How many years ago was it? And then the Vax bus was touring. My husband and I, we were in San Francisco visiting his brother, and I had heard that the Vax, they had fairly just started it. And
it's VAXXED.
Mm-hmm. And then it's documentary about research from, did everybody see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
everybody here at this table saw it.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can still see it. You go to Children's Health Defense and they have a movie tab and both Vaxxed and Vax 2.
Yeah.
So you should be able to watch them online.
And it's just
very interesting.
Going about and educate yourself. And this was one way that us parents could have somewhat educated ourselves. So getting back, we were in San Francisco. We saw the movie. I was like, we got to get this in town. Then it came into Kansas City. And I was like, we've got to get as many parents up there as possible to see it. So we rented a bus, or we borrowed a bus. Do you remember?
What was that?
From the Ark.
From the Ark. Yeah. They'd let us borrow. I went in and we talked to Tim and asked if we could borrow. He gave us 2. And so we only needed 1, and we got it transported a bunch of parents up to go see the movie. And then we got it to come to Ozark. And
Vaxxed
got a
too.
lot. How many different showings? There was like 4.
I think I saw Vaxxed 1.
It was Vaxxed 1 here in Ozark.
Yeah,
really?
in Ozark. I have not seen Vaxxed 2.
Vax 2 also came.
Vax 2 came here too. We saw them both here in Springfield.
I didn't see Vaxxed 2.
Oh, yeah.
Did we?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
I went with you.
We don't remember some of the things we've done.
It was the one in Nixa.
Nixa? Okay.
Nixa.
Yeah.
Vax 1 we saw, and then Vax 2 came shortly, not like a year later or something. It's a very good, it's not long. It's a good educational movie.
Again, you want to get more than one perspective. The media is going to tell us one thing. And then you also need to do your own research with other families, the anecdotal part of it, and then make your own decision.
And you know what? Even if you're not, because I'm not anti-vax, and I don't think vaccines probably cause Zion's autism, but what's the hurt in just separating the vaccines? I mean, even if you
healthy for everybody.
Yeah, it just seems healthy for everyone. And I'm so glad that I was given that choice for my 3rd child. So
I think when it came time for Vax 2, I had seen 1, thanks to Kara. And, it's like, man, is this going to be more of the same? And, that's sort of depressing. But the theme of Vax 2, when you got to the end, there was a little switch there. And I think they came up with the idea because it's hard to get a vaxxed versus unvaxxed study because, they talked about going to the Amish community or even the homeschooling community in some pockets.
Common sense research.
Correct.
Yeah. So, but then they thought families, right? Like Elizabeth. Okay, you've got 3 with autism, 2 without, and especially those who had later children that they didn't vaccinate at all, and because some of them became not anti-vax, but the politically correct is former vaxxer. Yeah, maybe that's what I am. I'm a former vaxxer. And, so they compare the health of the kid with autism, who's probably fully vaxxed, and their unvaccinated younger siblings. And for the majority of the interview of Vax 2, it was the unvaxxed are healthier.
It's true. It's true.
Yes, I have some nieces and nephews, and the ones that are fully vaxxed, they're sick all the time. They have ear infections. They're constantly sick. I have some
they talked about ear infections being a
I have some
huge side
others
effect of vaccines.
that are never sick. And what's the difference there? Well, some are fully vaccinated and some of them aren't.
Yeah.
Well,
And
there could
it's
be
really
other things too, like nutrition. We eat like crap now, so sorry.
Well, And then that's an environmental
Junk
part.
food causes autism.
Well, I mean, our vegetables, like unless you're growing it right from the garden out
All the
there.
hormones that were added.
Yeah,
have been
there's
proven.
a bunch of crap in
yes.
our food. I'm sorry.
No,
and I'm not the best mom, and I'm not forcing, especially if you have an autistic kid, you cannot get good stuff down them sometimes. So
Is pizza good stuff? Because Zachary eats a lot of pizza.
yeah, Oreos are good stuff.
No, I think the whole hormones in the food has been a proven.
Well, then that's the environmental
problem.
thing.
That's the environmental.
You know,
Yeah.
look at what we're putting in our bodies, or not what we're putting in our bodies. You know, because used to vegetables coming fresh out of the garden, you had all of these nutrients and minerals that you're getting. You don't get that anymore. So what's that doing to your body? What's that doing to a growing body that already has a genetic disposition? And then you turn around and you have all this environmental stuff, the stuff you put on your skin with all the chemicals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been proved. Just little girls starting their periods too young and developing breasts at 4th grade. You know, they were saying that's all the hormones in the milk. And now that's why it's so organic, just became better and better, which...
Well, since we're talking about food, what about diets and detoxes? You know, you remember many years ago Defeating Autism Now.
Which is called a Dan Doctor.
Mm-hmm. And then, so that a majority of that is diets and detoxes.
Yeah.
So have any of you guys tried the Dan protocol or tried the diets? And if it did, if it helped or if it didn't?
There wasn't one in Springfield.
Let's explain that a little slower here.
Kansas City or St. Louis.
It's a Dan Doctor, DAN, Defeat Autism Now, was a doctor. And that was a big thing back in our day. That you needed to find one, and you needed to find one fast. Okay, so go ahead, Kara. There was one in Arkansas, correct? Wasn't there a big one in Arkansas?
There could have been. We went to the one in St. Louis.
Okay, so go ahead.
We went in St. Louis and traveled. Yeah.
So
right
these were doctors that were helping us, right? That they were.
Yeah. You know, and here we go back to another topic here on our list. There's been a lot of doctors that have passed away. A lot of these doctors that have been treating our children, they mysteriously, have died. You know, that's another conspiracy. I'm bringing it up.
Okay, that's a
because
that's
what a
sidebar
lot of people,
conspiracy.
It's a sidebar. But Defeating
We're
Autism
going to get
Now,
a lot of listeners. Or we may be losing listeners.
But that's one of the
Kara's email address is. Please, I'm the one who checks the email. Please address it to Kara.
Kerra. But this is just our experience that we've had.
I mean, this is really happening, folks. Like, this is the kind of dynamic that we've had to listen to for 20 years. That's why we're talking about it. We know it's controversial. So,
That's right. So go ahead.
Yes.
Don't care.
Well, we took Kelsey. We went to a conference, whatever. She was diagnosed, and it was in Chicago. It was like a 4 or 5 day conference. You could pick and choose from all of these experts, and then all of these vendors that were coming in that were saying that they were going to help our children. You need to use this detox. You need to use this mushroom. You need to,
no milk, no dairy, no gluten.
Yeah, kidney detox, liver detox. Oh my gosh, my daughter.
What was that detox where they wrapped you up like a burrito? Remember that one? Oh, Carrie,
That's just the spa. That's what I do that all the time.
I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. There was chelation.
We did lots of. We did, and we did hyperbaric chamber treatments. We did, all the little drops. We spent thousands of money, and then we did the gluten-free and casein-free diet. We tried that for a year and a half to almost 2 years. Now, I can give you my experience or my daughter's experience and also mine because we also did it with her. We came back and we thought, okay, there's so much from this conference. There's so much. Where do we start? And they did say in several of the talks, start with the diet first.
Mm-hmm.
Start with the diet first. And so we eliminated casein first, the dairy. Mm-hmm. We eliminated the dairy, and then we turned around and we eliminated the gluten. And we did that. Now, my daughter, again, she has cerebral palsy, and she's always had problems with constipation. I mean, it's terrible. It was terrible. And we were giving her all of these laxatives and supplements to keep it soft. And sorry, Kelsey, as a Defeating Autism Now, you talked poop. They even took samples of poop.
Oh, you had to send your sample of poop.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All your kids, you're supposed to do that.
Because, they're like, you are what you eat. And if you are intolerant of these two components in your food, you need to clean your system out of it.
Right.
And it was hard.
And they're testing for mercury and testing for everything. Yes.
And so, we as parents were like, we felt guilty if we didn't do it. We're like, we got to do this. They're saying that this can help my child. And if we didn't do it, going back down the road, I didn't ever want to go back and look and think, oh, I wished I would have done this. Yeah. So we did it all. We had my parents gave us money, because it was so expensive, to go down to Texas to have, because we didn't have a hyperbaric chamber here. So we had to go down to Texas and go to the plant, Olney, Texas, I remember. And there were 4 of us moms that rented a house, and we took our children down and we were taking them to treatments every day. That alone was about $5,000, not including, the rent and the food and everything that were there, and then being away from the rest of your family.
But are Dan doctors still around?
I don't think so. I don't know what
happened to them. Where are they?
Wait, did you see any improvement?
Getting back to Kelsey, within a week of going gluten-free and casein-free, she started to have them regular. Oops.
Which by now we all know it's kind of a healthy thing to, eat low carb and all that. But back then it really wasn't. Everyone ate what they wanted.
Well, and even today, there's a lot of doctors that are testing people for gluten intolerance and casein intolerance. There's a lot of people that are gluten intolerant.
Didn't that stem from them saying that the gut was part of the reason for autism, right?
Yeah, the leaky gut.
Right. Because we went to Kansas City and the doctor looked like Einstein. He really did. He had white hair that stuck up. And we drove there. And
was it expensive?
It was, and we didn't have any money. And so we did that. And he was an allergist, I believe. And so did all sorts of allergy tests to see what Zachary was allergic to, and it came back that he was allergic to everything, basically. And that kid didn't have anything to eat. Like Papa, my father-in-law, he spent hours upon hours in the couple of years that Zachary was on that diet making, I'm trying to think, I think they were zucchini waffles. And zucchini's great, but I mean, nobody just wants to eat zucchini waffles their whole life. We couldn't find substitutes for the couple of foods that he did like. It was very difficult. I think for our experience at least, and we did a lot of supplements, and we did fish oil, is that what it's called?
Omega-3s and all that.
Can you imagine what that kid was thinking? That poor Zachary.
Yeah.
Just chugging that stuff down his throat. What a horrible thing. But anyway, I know
maybe
that's healthy too.
Sensory issues were
because of all that stuff.
No, she's not
But I mean, I think the culture, like we're talking about the shame part, it was you would go to conferences and no one had any ideas for you until you went to these conferences, and then you get all these ideas that you could do on your own if you figured it out, right? Like the diet. And so we kind of lived for, okay, what are we supposed to do to help our kids? And we went all over the place. And actually, I felt quite a bit of shame about the diet in the end because, I'm kind of tuned into the psychology of people. And I have a psychology degree. Michael reminds me, don't use your psychology degree on me. I'm like, okay, well, I already knew this stuff before I had the degree, but whatever. No, anyway, but I knew that if I told my family, right, even Michael, that I was going to test, like after a couple years, test food that was not gluten, casein free, that I would just get this barrage of horribleness, right? So I didn't tell anybody. Because there's so much in our minds about, is this working or is this not right? It's just so hard to know, right? And so I just did it by myself. I did my own little experiment.
Controlled study.
I did a controlled study and didn't tell anybody.
On yourself.
On Zachary. I gave him food that he wanted to eat desperately, that he hadn't gotten to eat in 2 years. And I'm like, going to school, and what do you send a kid that eats zucchini waffles? So anyway... So I did that, and it was just weird because none of the therapists, none of the family, it was all the same.
Nobody noticed.
Could tell a difference.
Yeah.
So this is when you started adding
This is when I started adding back in after the couple of years he'd been on the diet. And so then, I don't know, I did that for a couple months. And then I finally was like, hey guys, he's been eating cheese or, whatever it was. I don't remember.
Well, they say if there's not a wow factor with anything,
there's no wow factor, but I think
then don't do it. It's not working.
No, I think back then it was just like you felt shame or guilt as a parent.
For sure.
Even if you didn't see wows. That, okay, they're saying this could be a part of it, that could be a part of it, this could be a part of it. I mean, I just remember people trying to sell me all sorts of volcanic ash baths. That was something I did not do. But I mean, there was all sorts of things going around that people were, I guess, trying to be helpful. But I also think there were some points in time where I felt like we were being taken advantage of. I still think that happens to the disability community a little bit. Try this pill. It made my cousin's daughter talk. It's like, don't do that to me. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, Dan Doctor. So we did all that.
Or if you're spending so much on, like we spent like $100 a month on these vitamins that would mix in with this water.
And the special food too.
Yeah.
That was atrocious. That was the one detox. Was $100. I'm always thousands of dollars.
I just remember thinking that the rest of the family is, cutting all of our food. We were cutting down our grocery bill so we could buy the vitamins, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I have 2 other kids,
Right.
So it's like, you only do what you can really do. I mean, it's just like,
right.
Some of the things that we did, I just feel like we were just taken. But I mean, you're going to do whatever you want to. You're going to do whatever you can for your child, of course.
Well, I have met other families that did have some really good success with the gluten-free, casein-free diet, the DAN protocol. Very good success.
Yeah.
I had mentioned the hyperbaric chambers. We had met a family down in Texas that this young boy was just diagnosed with autism, was not speaking. He was 3, and they started sending him twice a day in the hyperbaric, and within 3 weeks, he started saying 2 and 3 words.
And Get me out of this tank.
Yeah, right?
Sorry.
That was the word.
That was a really bad joke. I'm sorry.
That's 6 words.
That's horrible. You can email me at this is Tara. Yeah, that's 6 words. Sorry. Get me out.
Elizabeth, what were you going to say?
Our family, so, we went through that. But, right now going around on Facebook, have you seen that if your child listens to these certain musical tones, they'll start to talk?
No.
Mm-mm. Yeah. I mean, families are, I think, have you seen?
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. It's, it's a new one that's going around. And so, I think families are still faced with that,
absolutely.
And
with
maybe,
theories.
I still get articles and people trying to sell me vitamins or essential oils or whatever the case may be.
Oh yeah, there's the ones with, certain essential oils. If you have those, in your home, then your kids will, be able to start to talk and increase their intelligence. Yeah. So I think it's kind of changed a little bit, but it's still there. They're kind of up in the game. And, I'd say maybe some of them do work, right? Mm-hmm. But it only works if whatever barrier to language or behavior or intelligence, if it's that particular barrier versus it's going to fix everybody.
Right. Well, listen, I didn't eat gluten for a week and I felt like $1 million. So, I mean,
I think that's probably a healthy choice.
Hard. I couldn't wait for a sandwich. But, I mean, I think any healthy diet probably makes you feel good,
Right. Oh, yeah.
So it's not going to cure you
But as adults, though, like I think, because we just talked to the speech therapist recently. And it's like, so, I mean, I have realistic hope for things, right? So by the time Zachary's now almost 23, do I really think that there's a lotion that he can apply that's going to take away a brain disorder? Like, no. I mean, I'm just not going to fall for it. Honestly, some stuff, if there's a vitamin that we think could make him healthier or whatnot, and a doctor recommends that, absolutely, let's take the vitamin. We can't swallow pills, but hey, whatever. We'll crush it. We'll figure out how to do it. Yeah. But I mean, the other stuff, I find it off-putting, disrespectful. I would not do that to someone else that was struggling through a medical diagnosis of some sort. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't just hear something that my cousin's whatever's selling and try to tell me that it's going to fix him. Because there again, that fix, that cure word, it's, I mean, there's other ways to go about this, like help him. I wish there were therapeutic ways. I'd love for research and things to come out with, but I don't think, volcanic baths and essential oils are going to do it for us at this point.
Right.
I think we're past the essential oil thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's, and it is so hard because there are some good things.
Yes.
How do we navigate that? Because I always think of, these miracle things and these oddities or whatever but I look back, how was PKU discovered? It was parents saying,
What's PKU?
PKU, it's your children get tested for that. They can't process something in food and it causes brain damage, correct?
Yeah.
Novice explanation, but it was parents.
I feel really dumb right now because I didn't know what that was.
Well,
I didn't know either.
And it might not have really come into, effect till I have younger children. So it mightn't have been because it's so important they test the child twice. Because it was realized because of a lot of parent reporting and the research was done and realizing we can't poly something, the child can't digest that. Some children can't digest it and it causes all sorts of disabilities and it's significant.
Was that the movie Lorenzo's Oil? Are you familiar with that movie?
I am, but I can't remember. No, I don't think so because once this damage is done, it's
done. It's not reversible.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important that they do this test. So
I remember chelation playing a part in getting rid of something that you can't, your body can't get rid of. The chelation was also very popular.
Which was also very controversial because some kids got very ill and almost died because of it.
Yeah. I feel like one child did die or something.
Because you pull out the bad, you can pull out the good too.
Good too. Yeah. Chelation was another thing. So, okay. I didn't know.
And the appropriate protocol for that, finding the right practitioner that actually knows how to detox properly.
Right.
And
Right.
So those that you're interested in the PKU, how do you know how to pronounce that?
I don't. Phenyl ketone urea
ketones
is an inborn error of metabolism that results in decreased metabolism of the amino acid, whatever that word is. Untreated PKU can lead to intellectual disabilities, seizures, behavior problems, and mental disorders.
Oh.
Yeah. So
does it go down and describe?
That's interesting.
I'm just thinking if the movie Lorenzo's Oil, Susan Sarandon, and I forgot who played the husband, but anyway.
I'm familiar with it.
It's a genetic autosomal recessive gene, which causes it. And it says the treatment is diet low in foods that contain it and increase in special supplements. It's an inherited genetic disorder.
But if you go back and look, it's a lot of
autism families.
The parents just say the parents were reporting, and so that's what prompted all the research and the discovery. So it's hard when we're looking at these miracle things or these things that are too good to be true, and we think no. But I did see Lorenzo Oil. It's been so long.
Yeah, I don't, it's not related to autism, but it was just the parents pushing for the research and they did have a breakthrough, but it came too late to help their son. And I don't know. It just, and Beyond Measures, another movie, I'm speaking in movies instead of medical. Beyond Measure, again, parents, and I don't remember what the specific disability was, but parents who were pushing the research and found the breakthrough. I did do the diet. I didn't have money to spend. I didn't even have enough money to go in debt to, so, and by the way, I'll just mention this. I'm working for an attorney who does bankruptcies, and I saw an autism family come in that most of you would know. And deficit spending, it's an economic theory that probably maybe got us out of the depression. And, when they came in, it was like, well, when you have a child with autism, maybe deficit spending, declare bankruptcy, if that's going to be anyway, we didn't go down that line. We did try the diet. I knew Jennifer Sowell had done it. I had read talking to you all, and I asked my pediatrician, should I give it a shot? And she said, yeah, it probably can hurt. Okay. I told Jennifer, you are going with me. So help me, you are going with me when we go shopping to Winslow's. I'll wait till you're available. So we all went, and we tried the diet. I didn't think JR was going to be a responder because he didn't have the constipation or the diarrhea. And, but it was worth a shot. And we only tried it for about 2 months and then went off. But a family who, her son graduated in Sarah's class at Willard. I was talking to her again. I met her in the lawyer's office. And because I typed the parenting plan, I knew from some of the terminology, it's like, and finally asked the attorney, oh, please, can I ask her if her child's on the spectrum because of the things that I was typing, Mm-hmm. And so finally I got permission to do that, green lighted. And sure enough. So this parenting plan specified it's this diet, this has to be followed when this child is out of my custody. Mm. And so I said, well, and he graduated with honors from Willard High School, went on, got a 4-year degree, and she said, I asked her, how did you know the diet was working? And again, within 24 hours, he was starting to vocalize again. Mm. And I said, well, I didn't think my son was going to be a responder. I thought going to ABA would have been a better road for us because I'm thinking ABA, that's an educational approach. That is something that I could do just because in a former life I had been a teacher. I thought maybe that's something I could do. That
was doable.
It was doable. Mm-hmm. And that seemed like a better path for me than the diet and the biomedical.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about ABA. That's very controversial. There's different kinds of ABA. Some parents are afraid to use it because they feel it's too mean and can traumatize their child.
Yeah, I don't know where everyone stands on ABA, like the types that are out there right now, except, I have a good friend that works at a DASH, which I forget what it even stands for. But listen, back in the day when I worked at Rivendell, we did ABA. At the time, it was the only data approved or data documented ABA that was out there was Dr. Carbone, and it was all positive reinforcement. And there was like 60-minute episodes out there about the negative ABA that was out there where it was negative reinforcement. Ours was all positive.
Yeah.
And I'm not an expert, but I was trained by an expert, and I thoroughly believe in ABA. I saw it work. I saw children speak. You talked about the diets and how, they were on it and they started talking. For a nonverbal child to say, hi, mama, that had no language, after working with them, that, there was a lot of great, wonderful stories. And I feel like I still use ABA on my son and my husband sometimes by transferring things, or
if it's the truth,
or repeating. Can you go upstairs and get the laundry? Sure. What are you going to get? The laundry. Okay. It's called a transfer, I believe. Yeah. But I still use it. But like I said, that was the Dr. Carbone method, which was data driven, and it was wonderful, and I believe it. And I think it was all positive reinforcement, which we're all motivated by positive reinforcement. Yeah. We go to work, we get a check. Right. We go to the so there's nothing wrong with teaching positive reinforcement and expecting something good in return, because that is life. That's why we do things. So the negative, I don't know much about that. I don't know who.
And it's usually, isn't it the younger parents nowadays that are not wanting to use the ABA, or?
Yeah, I don't know much about that.
I think a lot of them, what's happening is a lot are being exposed to negative comments that are circulating on the internet about, historical, somebody's experience with. And it's kind of escalated to this very negative thing. Again, I think sometimes things become trendy, to talk negative about it. But what these younger parents are being exposed to when they go, because, back when we were doing our research, we were talking to other families who lived it, who maybe experienced ABA, and going to libraries and talking to professionals. But now they just hop on the computer and whatever comes up when you type in ABA, especially if you type in negatives or cons to ABA, you're going to get a lot of rhetoric on ABA is bad. I had it when I was a kid. It was evil, and so what they're doing is they're hearing this, and then they're, might do a little research. And back when maybe these adults were younger and going through it, it was before, there was any regulations, before, there were strict guidelines on what level of training and professionalism. And so they're reporting on an ABA that, while a lot of the basics and the true, techniques and things have held up, but they were, reporting on it before it was refined, when it used to be, more strict 40 hours a week, one-on-one, sitting at a table. Although we said, and as we talked, some people actually like that, as long as it's that positive and, the positive reinforcement. But, so they're seeing some of this negative, and so as, I've kind of talking to young families, did some research and really landed on Temple Grandin and Dr. Shore said. I watched a speech from them, and they were just saying, if you're not happy with ABA, you need to look at who's doing it. Who, what therapist is doing it, because, they kind of went through, the history of it, went through some different things, but they said, it really boils down to, if you're not happy, find another therapist, that ABA has merit, has success, as Mary was saying. But, so I think with the younger, I think that's some of what's fueling that. Some might be just different parenting techniques or, whatever's kind of more popular at the time. And it's because it's, to do ABA therapy, go in with a younger child, it's going to be pretty structured. I mean, it still can, be playful, but it's going to be a little
fun,
more.
because we used to say, let's go work. And they'd all be excited. Let's go work.
Yeah.
And we'd work in a little room, and it was little. And they'd be in their chair and they couldn't escape or run or get out. But it sounds worse than it is. But
I think that's
it was
the kind of stuff they talk about though now.
Well, it was a corner desk. So
you've trapped them in a room and they're,
really
all that stuff.
You're just,
right.
Again, because they haven't experienced it probably.
Yeah, you have to know what I would not be a part of anything that was, dangerous or evil or, and they just.
I think it changed our life. I mean, we did it for so many years. I'm looking at Heather, maybe 5 years. I mean, it was a lot. It was 3 to 5 years.
We did it until kindergarten.
Yeah. We had 2 ABA therapists from Rivendell come to our home 4 days a week.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's why my husband had to take a job that paid a lot more.
At the time, it was so expensive.
Yeah. And then to keep them, we had to keep raising their fee because there were so many people being diagnosed at that time.
Yes.
That I just had a friend who knew somebody, Heather, at the table, who connected me with the ABA therapist, and
it was so popular. I mean,
oh my gosh, she was doing it out of the kindness of her heart, really. But we kept on boosting her wage and paying out of pocket for it because, of course, back then insurance didn't pay for it. Yeah. Everything was out of pocket.
Right.
And actually, when Zion was diagnosed, the neurologist said that was the only thing that you could do. You have to find an ABA therapist right away.
Wow. Yeah, that neurologist. I didn't always hear that from a neurologist, so that's interesting.
It's the one that I talk bad about all the time, but that's the one thing that he told us. Yeah.
Gold star for him.
Yeah.
Okay. On that one. Okay.
I mean, I only have one downside of ABA, and it is, and Zion's sitting right here, but and he may not say this is a downside either, but the only thing is that he learned to be rewarded for every single thing he did. So for many years, and even today, he likes to be rewarded and praised for every single little thing that he does. So like if it's a job that he is supposed to do, he's a grown adult now, he has jobs that he's supposed to do every day, he still says, Mom, I did this. He wants the praise, which sometimes I'm just stubborn and I do not want to. I'm just like, this is something you're supposed to be doing anyways. You're an adult. I don't need to, take you to McDonald's or something like that.
Right.
So that's the only downside.
You should have
but
been weaned off of that a little bit because you're supposed to wean off until just verbal praise and not. And you might need to
is there
tell
a
him.
protocol?
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you don't say.
Well, it is verbal praise that he wants still.
Yeah, or sometimes you say, you know what, I'll talk to you at the end of the day, or whatever.
Yeah.
There is a method to wean off that doesn't always have to happen, but we do wean off from like edible.
You know what?
Well, not edibles,
yeah.
but
the benefits.
I meant candy, food, chips.
The benefits were amazing for us.
Yeah,
floor time and ABA are what changed our life
because we all really do want praise. I mean, really in life, we all want to be loved and said we're doing a good job.
I think that's his love language too.
It probably is his love language. I mean, listen, it's not my husband's. He's not very verbal, and I miss it a little bit, saying, he's more purchasing things. Yeah, words.
That's what it's mine.
He might be, So, but there is a protocol, yes, Kara, to that. But where we just give high five or a wink or good job or something like that. So it works. I like it.
I have a funny story about those rewards because Chase was, at Rivendell and they were training somebody new and they came in and Chase was, going through his ABA and they're like, I thought the reward was supposed to be something positive. And they're like, yeah, Chase loves broccoli because he had a bowl of broccoli sitting there.
Yeah, you never knew.
Yeah. Because that's what he loved.
Yes, you never do.
His broccoli.
I had one student that was, profound and just liked to watch tapes rewind on the actual TV. And so I would just click it would just spin and he liked to see the lights on the rewind. So, you found what worked. You find what works, but.
And if you can't afford the professional, again, let me put a plug in for the Little Red Hen does ABA. Read a book, whether you call it floor time ABA, interact with your child. If you, don't let them sit there in a corner rocking or stimming. Try to break into their world.
Mm-hmm. Interrupt.
Walk outside, do something, get them involved.
Yeah. So I'm doing the poor man's version, right? And I remember got a little bit of training from Michelle Williams. She was at,
I forgot about her,
Forest Institute. That's no longer got bought out by Burrell, I believe. Anyway, so she gave us some training and had a Drury University psych major who had 100 hours to work with JR that we didn't have to pay for.
Oh, I remember.
And it was like, oh, wow. So can I get her into Springfield Public Schools, into the Delaware self-contained classroom? And it was like, probably not. So I got to find another alternative. So I went next door to the church. Westminster Presbyterian Church is next door. And I went in and I made the pitch. And I said, here's what I want to do. I want to bring JR over from Delaware, just walking down the block, go into your preschool room, and we're going to do ABA, and we're going to do about, 8 hours a week. And so there was an intern pastor. I'm making my pitch. And I said, you're probably never, ever going to hear a conservative, Pentecostal, evangelical Christian say this, but thank God for B.F. Skinner. And so ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. And so, his theories, you're beyond freedom. Everything is stimulus response. And so, which is antithetical to much of what I was taught at Evangel. But anyway, B.F. Skinner's work, that's the basis of ABA. And it works.
Yeah, well said. So another controversial subject, let's talk about inclusion. Enforced inclusion. What was the other one? Full inclusion. And how that's being out, what would you say, Elizabeth, out in the community.
Right.
You want to get us started on that?
Yeah, I guess, when we're talking inclusion for years, I was one of the founding members of Stars for Autism, and we had the Autism Friendly City Proclamation Project, and we taught, went around to first responders, stores, just anybody that would listen on, taught them about autism. I know, Terry, you did things like that too, teaching, educating on autism. And so the word, back in that day, it was inclusion. We want everybody to feel that they can go to different places, that they're welcome. And so as that progressed, that good feeling, we started to see things like home and community-based services, HCBS. There has to be, to include people, we have to look at ratios, and we have to look at, we can't have more than one supported living home within 3 blocks of each other, because that's not inclusion. And we have to close down certain places where maybe people gather that have disabilities to do art. They need to be out into the community. So we started to see this uptake, and instead of making it good and educating and helping people be aware that everyone with autism should be welcome, we started kind of pushing a little more, taking our individuals with an autism diagnosis and pushing them out into the community, which, some of that's good. Some of that is really good. But what I've been seeing is it's gone from, everybody feeling welcome to kind of to more of a forced thing. You have to do this. You have to include everybody. To me, so the boys attended a supported prom, so the Tim Tebow Prom Night to Shine. Wonderful, incredible event. It is for people with disabilities. Right. So the dates are volunteers that come in. And that was an amazing experience for my sons. But prom at their high schools, is that appropriate? For Nathan, he would be miserable. He wouldn't even understand why he was there. The noise, the confusion, he wouldn't have friends there. He wouldn't, Chase has attended this night to shine. So now he's thinking, especially after getting his tailored suit, he's going to try to go to his high school prom. But what we're seeing is that we're taking away some of those specialized events because we're, it's the thing to do. It's best for everybody with disabilities to push them out in the community. They've got to be there. And
the world needs to accept them right now. The world needs to accept them, and they're out there, and everyone should get along and accept all these people with disabilities. And darn it, we're going to do it, and we're going to. That's what I'm hearing.
Right. Whether they want to be there or not.
Correct.
And that's the forced inclusion. Whether they want. By the way. And two, and that forced inclusion is also forcing those, because it's one thing to ask for reasonable accommodations, right?
Right.
But then to have, a business or, some kind of a sports complex, to have to change everything. So at any moment of time, somebody with autism is going to be perfectly included in everything they do. Whether they want to be there or not. I don't know how others feel about that, because I love inclusion.
Yes, I do too.
I love it. But it's inclusion to me, used to be, inclusion meant giving everybody what they needed to be present. And now there's a shift.
Yes, there is a shift. And I think that's where it also comes into play with the workshop, SWI in Springfield. We also run the Monette office and the Marshfield office, and always just check out your workshop in the community. And I think that in your own community, to see if it's feasible for you to be there or not. They're all different and they're all run different, but I'm very proud of all 3 of ours that I sit on the board. But, I was told a lot of service coordinators are not referring anyone to the workshop. I don't know if that's because of funding or whatever, because, there's no inclusion there. So, but it is a choice. It is a choice for those people with disabilities if they want to be at the workshop or not. So our people with disabilities should have a choice just as well as where they want to work, if they want to work in an inclusive environment or not. However, the workshop is inclusive. In our cafeteria, we have a neurotypical person with 2 people with disabilities that work in the cafeteria. We have the supervisors are typical. There's volunteers. I know that a couple people within the disability community have visited recently and have been shocked to know that there's so much inclusivity there with typical people. And there's a lot of people out there that think workshops should be closed down. And listen, some of them should have been maybe, with the way they're run. You just got to be really careful with them, to make sure they're not just sitting there doing puzzles, or like a daycare. Ours is an actual job. It's an actual company. We do business with a lot of, French's and, a lot of other name brands. But they should want to be there. They should have a choice. I spoke with one parent whose daughter has Down syndrome and worked in a doctor's office for many years. She was never asked to go to lunch. No one ever really included her. She should work there. It's out in the community. She's so much happier at the workshop with her friends, working there, never complains about going. I've talked about my own son who does work in the community, and it's hard. I mean, he just got reported last week. Someone complained about him. And it never ends. He's been there, 7 years? And I know I've talked about it before, but it's not as easy. And he does want to be there, but not everyone accepts him there. It's still a struggle. And yes, do I wish the whole world would accept everybody? And I do. I wish there was no crime. I wish everyone loved each other. I get that. But quit forcing this inclusion on us. Our people with disabilities have a choice too. And Heather, what you were saying too, glamorizing the homecoming queen and prom. Let's throw somebody up there with Down syndrome or with a disability, and it gets on the news that night.
Right.
Right. That's what you were talking about. Like glamorizing, do you think that's inclusion? It is, but how do you feel about that?
It feels forced. That feels like,
look what we're doing.
Yeah, it's a little bit too much of a spectacle for me. But I know other families, in the disability community might think it's wonderful. So I know we all have different perspectives. But for me, it's just, I don't understand exactly.
Sometimes it is a true win. If it's a true win, because everybody knows that person and they enjoy their personality.
Right.
But most of the time it's, I don't know for sure, but, when it is true, then that's great, but it's not always,
Yeah. I don't mean to get on my soapbox about it, but people want to shut down workshops sometimes. In fact, there was one in, I forget the town that closed it down. The director and 40 people with disabilities lost their job, I think. And, I'm a big advocate of workshops where people are accepted for who they are. And if they have a meltdown or they're upset or they're crying, we teach them to work through that, and how if you're going to work out in the community later, you can't do that.
Yeah, in the community, they're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that. And that's been all shown here that,
all of our kids have lost jobs.
Yes. And they don't have to stay there. They can move on. And we have had lots of employees that have moved on to work in the community. I'm just really tired of the forced inclusion. I think you said it so well, Elizabeth, that it should be their choice what they want to do. And I would hate for Night to Shine to ever be taken away.
I doubt they're going to attack that.
But I've heard recently that the culture from being fully community, integrated or whatever, that to me it seems like nothing should be all or nothing. Yeah. There's always a happy medium. And that's what True. I think families are looking for, a happy medium. If my son can go and have a traditional employment and do a great job and he loves it, that's great. But also let's have the choice of the workshop if that better fits his lifestyle. Because I think some of the people that are making these kind of legislative things about where they live and how, often they should be out and about. And because even providers, the provider that staffs Zachary the one part of the day now, a week, they have all these mandated things. You have to take them here and you have to take them there. And it's like, well, what if they don't want to go to the park every day? Like, I don't want to go to the park every day.
Right.
So, it comes down to why don't you ask the families what they need? And what we need is choice and availability of services. So,
right.
And I think some of it is, I think it's doing more damage by forcing it because it's telling the community, telling everyone at large, hey, you need to recognize this person has a disability. It highlights and accentuates it because it's, instead of it just becoming natural, it takes away the natural, like they're saying, you have to go here because it's in the plan that they have to have so many hours of community networking.
Right.
And I think a lot of that started with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
But I think, and that's what I've loved inclusion. I've loved all the work that's been done, but just the last few years, I've seen it take a turn to be where it's removing the choice and highlighting the fact that these people have disabilities and they need to be in there, whether they're in the community, whether they want to.
Well said. Well said. Anybody else on it have an opinion about it? Oh,
we're quiet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a hot topic, and I think sometimes the people that are pushing it also they do not have someone in their family with a disability. So
that's what I mean. Yeah, they don't understand. Talk to the families that are dealing with it. What do their children need? Adults, children, whatever.
Right, right. But no, listen, I wish it was easily done.
Yeah.
But it's not.
So my son needed the sheltered workshop.
Yes.
And
they really don't call it sheltered anymore, by the way. Okay. No, I'm not correcting you. I'm just listeners too, because we are sheltering. We were not sheltering them from society. I think it got a bad rap. We're just kind of sheltering them. It's not sheltered anymore.
Yeah, so the
it's
workshop.
Called the workshop. Yeah.
The workshop. And there'd be times where, people would ask, how much money is he making again?
Oh, yes, the piece rate. Yes.
And they're making money off of him. It's like, well, he hasn't proved that he can hold a competitive job for more than a year. So that's our next goal, go 2 years. And so what's the alternative? The alternative is volunteering in the community. And how much does that pay?
It's not just about the pay. Again, it's not a black and white. It's about socialization. It's about learning new skills. Also about getting paid. Right. I mean, it's
contributing to society.
So much more than that. But
the point I was trying to make is at the workshop, so he's not making minimum wage.
Right.
But he's making more money being socialized, maybe not
learning skills.
And somehow, volunteering in the community to get that inclusion is more righteous than being at
some service coordinators believe that. Which is sad.
That's another topic.
Yeah.
Service coordination.
Yes.
Well, and I think it goes down even in the classroom, is full inclusion, or, there are some students that do better in a classroom that doesn't have neurotypicals in it because they need more one-on-one, or that student may have too many outbursts to be into a classroom. And so that will hinder other ones from learning. So
and it does.
It comes back to ask the families, and it depends on the child. It depends on the person and what they need.
Right.
I would have loved my son to be in classroom all the time, but his behavior would shut down everybody's learning. And that was the protocol for when he would have a meltdown or something, would be to completely take the entire rest of the classroom out and let him sort of rage in the classroom. So that hindered, learning. I can see both sides of the coin.
Me too.
I have 2 neurotypical kids too. So is it right for them to take my son out and let the other 29 or however many people were in his class continue to learn, or let him rage in that classroom?
Right.
And to keep him into an inclusive environment. So, I definitely understand that. I don't think I was being, crazy to say, just you put him somewhere else.
Right.
You know what?
Yeah. And not every parent's like, I've been in the schools and some parents are like, oh no, they should be in the classroom all the time. And I'm like, oh, really? That shouldn't happen. Because the child was just kind of out of control. But there are parents out there that, nope, they should be in that classroom with their peers. There's no way possible that child should be with, So, school's another topic, but But anyway, thank you for listening. And I'm sure there'll be more controversial topics later, maybe.
This will definitely be
in the future.
And if we've skipped one,
let us
email
know.
us and let us know if there's something you guys want us to talk about.
We'll talk about it. We'll research it. And maybe we forgot something, but more topics on the way. So thank you for listening. And Tara, where can everybody find us?
Yeah, we're at navigatingadultautism.com. You can listen to us on Apple and Spotify and on our website. We also have an Instagram and Facebook page, Navigating Adult Autism Podcast. And then you can also email Kara or Tara at moms@navigatingadultautism.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.